Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our next speakers. Kathy Eastwood is the founder of E equals Y, which is committed to eradicating poor managers and nurturing great leaders through a simple formula: express, engage, and execute, powered by emotions. Now, from an individual contributor to a C-suite executive, Kathy met fabulous leaders and toxic managers along the way, who taught her the key elements for success is leadership powered by emotions, especially when working in a hybrid environment. Now, Kathy is going to be joined by our own amazing Rob Rebar, who's our Senior Events and Communities Lead. Rob has produced and managed promotional campaigns, including events and experiential marketing for theatrical works, rock concerts, and in support of global luxury brands and Broadway productions, as well as television networks. Now, whether meeting with a top-tier industry talent or pushing cargo boxes at an event activation, which I have personally witnessed, that's pretty amazing. Rob brings together his passion for media and production with a skill set focused through his professionalism and conscientiousness. I'm really excited for this talk, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Rob. Take it away.
Thank you, Meg, and welcome, Kathy. Thank you for being here. You've got a great presentation for us, so I'm going to turn off my camera a little bit and let you take the floor. But before I do that, I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you are located in the world, and also if you could tell us a little bit more about E equals Y.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rob. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. I have been part of the Power to Fly community in a lot of different ways. I started as an individual. I joined. I wanted to learn when I was career seeking. And when I landed my dream job as a chief people officer in one of the companies, I partnered with Power to Fly as well because we needed to source diverse candidates. And then now I'm actually a mentor, so helping out with different folks. So it's a great organization. And then to be here on Women's History Month and International Women's Day a day later, but it's just so much fun to be here. So I am coming to you from New York City. And I have, as Meg was saying, that I've come from an individual all the way to the C-suite and everything in between. And when I look at diversity and inclusion, it is something that I'm very passionate about. And what I found out, there weren't a lot of great leaders, right? So I left corporate America and I was trying to figure out what is a good leader, what makes the difference. And that's what I've been focusing on with E equals Y, is to help create a formula for folks that they can use, right? A lot of people say leaders are born. Well, there are a lot of great leaders, but when you actually sit down and talk to everyone, there are a few fundamentals that everyone uses and people can learn what those are. So even if you're not born a leader, there's a way to learn to be a better leader and to interact with your teams and drive change.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think that being born a leader, there's a lot of fallacy to that. I think, I do definitely agree with the 10,000 hours, and there's so many things that we can learn. And often when we're talking to our partners, they even say, you know what, you don't have to be an exact fit for this job description, because part of our job is to train you and tell you and teach you those things. So I completely agree with that philosophy. Well, and I'm really looking forward. So let's go ahead and, walk us through this amazing presentation, and then I'll jump back on, take some questions from the audience before we run out of time.
Sounds good. Great. And, hopefully you can see that screen. When Rob and I were talking, trying to figure out, what would be valuable for the organization during this conversation, I've worked remotely for over 20 years of my career. So when the pandemic hit, it didn't dawn on me that too much was going to change. I've been on the other side of a conference call for years with international calls, getting up early in the morning, late at night, constantly on the phone, trying to encourage people to get onto video chat so I could see their faces, et cetera. So for me, when the pandemic hit, I was like, yeah, this is going to be the same, pretty much, just a little bit different. Now everyone's going to be in the same boat I am. This is going to be great. But what I quickly learned is this wasn't going to be the new norm. This hybrid workspace was different for so many people. And we really have to figure out how to do things differently to help individuals and help leaders be different. And that's why I coined it that, we have to look at it as the new different. It's not the same. So you got to ask yourself, well, what was it, think back a couple years, and what was it like when we were all face to face? And as a leader or an individual, someone that's influencing change, when you were face to face and you looked and you walked into the office, you could learn so much so quickly. You look at this picture and suddenly you can see if you have anyone that's disabled on your team, you can see who's getting along and who's not getting along. Where are the pockets of people? Who's having a good day? Who's not having a great day, right? And, there's so much you can tell just by looking at this screen of, oh, I get it. Okay, here's what's going on. And you can adjust very quickly. But if you think about what happened, we all suddenly went to Zoom, right? We just very quickly went to look at the screen all day long. Now you were losing all of those interactions, right? It was hard to have the small talk with the individuals. It was hard to know if your leader was being consistent with you and were they really in the office and what they were, how they were interacting with different people. Right now, some good things came out of this because you started to learn people's personal spaces and how they were interacting, and you got to meet the kids, you got to meet the dogs. So there was a lot of goodness when you think about going remote, but you lost a lot. And also when you think about it, it was easier to get disconnected. So I firmly believe that leadership is making sure you drive inclusion. Because if you do not include everyone, then you're not going to be able to keep diversity, because you're only going to be able to relate to the people that are just like that, and you'll have your confirmation bias. So leaders have to be inclusive. And when you're on Zoom, it's hard to do that because everyone's got different personalities. And what happens, and you look at what we've been going through over these last few years now, is people were able to disconnect very easily, right? They're able to interview at noon because they can look at the computer and just, oh, let me go on the interview. You're not getting the cues that, oh, they wore something different today. I wonder why. So there's a lot of opportunity to disconnect from your team and not build the trust. So in this new different, you have to think about, what do people want? And we're in a situation where a lot of people are referring, this is not a new term, the great resignation or the great reevaluation. What's happening and what as leaders can we do? Because when you talk to the recruiters, when you talk to individuals, there's two common themes that are coming up. One, I want to work remote. Most individuals are saying they want some element of working remote. So yes, I'm happy to go back, but I don't want to be there 5 days necessarily. So the hybrid work and workplace is here to stay. And we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do differently to try to solve for that. Now, here's the interesting one. And this is why I talk about leadership and the new different in this hybrid world. Most recruiters will tell me, my manager does not fill in the blank. This is why I'm leaving, right? You go with the old adage that people leave managers, not companies. It is true. And I think a lot of us are all sitting here going, yep, I have absolutely left a job because of my manager, right? So in this new world, we have to figure out how to be different. And when I talk about leadership, I think it's important that I stress, I don't look at it as only managers, people that have people reporting to them. Leadership is really for any time you're trying to get people to drive change. So what do we need to do? What we have to do differently is we have to double down on the people, first and foremost. So when I wrote my dream job, I said I wanted to help leaders drive change, but they needed to care about the people, because if people are not first, you're not going to accomplish anything in what you're trying to do. So in this new, different hybrid world, how you succeed is two things primarily. You have to be vulnerable and you have to be deliberate, because you lose that ability to absorb so much when you are, face to face. So you have to be vulnerable with your team, but you have to make opportunities to be vulnerable. And that's that deliberate piece. So whether it's having the virtual happy hours, whether it's arranging a get together with everyone, once a month, whether it's sharing your own personal story of what's going on, you need to be vulnerable and you need to be deliberate. And this isn't comfortable for everyone. So it really is asking to go outside of your comfort zone, but you get to be your own self. And when you can define who you are and lead with your heart, it's a lot easier. You don't have to be someone else. You just need to be yourself. So, when you think about leadership, and when I talk to a lot of folks, at the end of the day, what you really want to know, would my team recommend someone else, their best friend, their peer, their family members, to come join our team? Is it a great team? Do we want to work here? And then the other thing is really about, if presented with the same opportunity, would they go work with me? I'd love to know that, because, why am I doing this if people aren't going to follow along with me? So what we've done is put together a leadership assessment score. If anyone's familiar with a customer NPS score, think about it from a leadership perspective. How likely are you to follow this leader? And what we've learned in the research is, if you are an E3 leader and following this methodology that we'll talk about, your team typically will think greater than you do, which is, I think, fascinating. But I think E3 leaders who lead with their heart know they can always be better. But you will see that even if a leader that believes in this and a leader that does not, the team's not going to think the same way. So you really have an opportunity to change your thinking about, will they follow? Will they recommend others to join? Because this is how you're going to be able to accomplish things. Because as a leader, our job is to make sure we can help get people to take action. Leadership is about influence. And this is why I say it's not about how many people you manage. So in one of my career progressions, I was an individual contributor. I was going for my first management role, and the dreaded question came up: have you ever managed before? And it's like, oh, how am I going to get this job if I don't have the experience? I can't tell you I have the experience. What am I going to do in this process? And when I really stopped to think about it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I've been a leader my entire life. I've started, I was the captain of the volleyball team, or, it's about influencing people. So I was constantly involved in projects at work that required me to influence people and get them to take action when they didn't report to me. And this was so important. When I finally realized this, oh, actually, that's harder. Leadership is about that influence without telling people exactly what to do and telling them how to do it, and then having to listen to it, right? So think along the lines of, that's what leadership is about. I have to influence people on how to do that. So then it's about, how do I get that to happen then? So here's a statistic that it keeps me up at night, I'll be honest. 8% accomplish their goals. All right, 8%. So what are people doing? What are leaders doing that help be part of that 8%? And it is truly as simple as this formula. And I often say it is not rocket science. You can take this away today and start leveraging it in your personal life, in your business life, everywhere. But if you follow these 4 steps, you will start to have a tremendous amount of success. And if you've already had success, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you can actually look back on this and go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what, oh, yeah. Or where I didn't have success, this is what I missed out on. So it's these 4 elements, and it's E3 powered by the E, right? Express, engage, execute, powered by emotions. First, you've got to be able to paint the picture. What's the ideal vision and what's the end state of where we need to get to? It helps people, it goes back to, I was saying that leadership isn't about telling people what to do, right? You want to influence them. Well, to do that, you got to give them the picture of where are they going to go? What do they need to look for? And you provide the end state, which is the inspiration, the motivation, and you focus them on the end state so they can look back to figure out what are the next logical things to do. And you'll find you can empower people tremendously with this because you're not telling them what to do. And then that's part of how you then engage people, because now you have to bring people along with you on the journey. So you could paint the best picture, best vision, but no one's bought in, you're not going to get anywhere. So now you have to think about, how do you get people? How do you engage them? What do they need? And everyone is diverse. This is where you talk about diversity, right? No two people are the same. So you have to do things from multiple levels. And there's a leadership style called situational leadership, which is really about thinking about each person. And I'll talk about it a little bit further, but with them, like, what's in it for me? So engagement, bringing the folks along. Now, a lot of people might stop there, right? Great vision, everyone's rah, rah, we're ready to go, but we want to be part of the 8%. We want to make it happen. And this is where the execution comes into play. You've got to help put structure. You got to put governance around it. You got to put checkpoints. You want to put rewards and recognition in place to help people, move forward and make progress. So that's the execution piece. And then lastly is the emotions of making sure that people are personal, that you look at the human and emotional qualities. And this is what helps you be that vulnerable and deliberate self to connect. So if you were to ask me where to begin, right, there's 4 simple steps. One is know yourself. Make sure you know who you are and how you show up and how people can navigate. I am a nurturing driver. If you ask my parents, they'll tell you I'm bossy, right? I'm known as the bossy pants in the family, but I'm okay with that because we've talked about it and they all know that I'm doing it because I care and I love. And that's the nurturing part. I like to win. I'm competitive. I've got a lot of red energy. I like to be brief, be gone, get things done, but I'm an extrovert. So I like to be collaborative. This knowing yourself allows you to tell others and help navigate that. So first and foremost, know yourself and share it with others, right? Great that you do the work, but really put it out there and share with others. Next, we talked about engaging folks, right? So listen to what others want. We all come to work for a different reason. It's our WIFM. What's in it for me? For some people, it's the paycheck. For others, it's to have greater purpose. And by the way, that's growing more and more. They want a career progression. So what's in it for me? Because that is going to how you inspire and enable those on your team to help grow what you're trying to accomplish, to engage, to execute, to help you reach the end goal. Next is follow the methodology. It's that simple. Just take that formula and continue to apply it. Ask yourself 4 questions. Have I expressed the end vision? Am I bringing everyone along? Are we executing against the plan? And am I using my emotions to connect to the hearts of others? And last but not least, it's connecting to the hearts of people, right? It's about having the emotional qualities and really being able to come to the table with awareness, to be curious, to be courageous, enable and help others. And all of this really is what helps drive success. And so there's just a lot of opportunities here of how you drive success. So I'm going to stop sharing and let's see if I can pull that off. There we go.
This is wonderful. Thank you. I love this. I was writing down so many notes while you were going along. So I definitely welcome the audience if you have any questions for Kathy to put those into the chat so we can discuss. But I was thinking one question I had, Kathy, was What about people who might be natural introverts, who might shy away from conflict, and in maybe an in-person setting, it's a little easier to address that, and in a hybrid setting, well, it's like, okay, well, now I don't have to engage at all because I've got this screen in here. What do you say to those people who are introverted managers?
It's to find someone on your team that has the extrovert gene, because you want to surround yourself by all types, right? So if you've got an extrovert on your team, I would be tapping them on the shoulder and saying, you know what, I need your help to engage. I'll feed you some of the information, but can you help drive the dialogue? Can you put yourself out there first? That'll get me comfortable. It's about owning it, right? And knowing that, hey, I am not an extrovert, I'm an introvert, and sharing that with your team. It's not the easiest thing, but that's why you have others on your team to help you.
Yeah, it goes back to that slide where you were identifying yourself as bossy. You just kind of have to think about, okay, what am I? What are my strengths? And how can I put those out into the world and, fill in those gaps with maybe other people on my team?
Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. And another question that we get a lot from our, I got one question from the audience. So I'll get to that in one moment. But one question we get a lot from our companies we work with is, in a hybrid setting or a remote setting, how do I establish a good company culture, company value system? I never understand it often because, international companies are able to do that, but that's a question we get all the time in this world. So what would you say to those people who are worried about setting up a company culture or company value in a hybrid world?
It's knowing it all comes with the expression, right? Who are you as a company? So just as I was saying, as an individual, a company needs to define it, right? And having that clearly articulated of, this is our purpose, this is our vision. And then it's that deliberate element. So one of the things I've done with a lot of teams is drive a leadership academy, right? Remotely. So many people think you need to do this as one and done, and that's what we've traditionally done. But you have to find ways to do this in smaller increments repeatedly.
Yes.
That's how you build the culture, right? And you keep saying the messages, this is who we are, this is what we want to do. Then you have a reward system that rewards people that are, following that culture. They're emulating the behaviors. So that's where that deliberate element comes in. It's not easy. You can't do it naturally. You have to go after and put a plan together for it.
Yeah. And then one thing we've been talking more about too is even regional cultures too, or if you're working with a global workforce, those cultures might not be the same everywhere. So those trainings that you're talking about might not just be one universal training. There might be separate trainings that you have to have depending on where you are in the world too.
Absolutely. And I've set up champion groups, right? So that, as you're trying to drive the cultures, you're getting the individuals to provide you the feedback. Because so often we try to assume we know the answers and we don't. So you need to get the feedback from everyone in the local places and get that diverse mindset.
The question from Jay is, how does E=Y dive deep into career paths?
Yeah, great question. So in a number of different ways, we're actually working on one program right now, which is around building out career paths and building talent, right? Because everybody wants career paths. So it's first knowing what your hierarchy is in the organization, knowing what the training is, understanding how you're going to drive the leadership to help them understand. Right? You can put the best career paths out there, but it's a change management element. So we tend to work with HR to define the structures, L&D organizations to define the training, and then make sure there's a change management program in place to execute against it.
That's great. And Ralph is asking, if you had to pick one particular skill that has helped you the most, what would that be?
curiosity, really being curious. It's funny. I was just meeting with a colleague. My first career, I'm a CPA and I was an auditor, and we'd be asked to go in and have to audit the books of another company. And you had no idea what you were doing. Sorry. It's just the truth. And you were like thrown in, but you just had to keep asking questions. And every time you asked a question, you either got it right or you didn't, and you learned from it, and you kept picking yourself up and elevating yourself. And that curiosity drives the awareness of yourself. It drives the awareness of others. And it just teaches you so much along that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally agree. And one other question I had before we run out of time is also, another thing we've heard from some of the companies that we work with is people are worried, okay, like sometimes the people in the office are going to get priority treatment. Sometimes the people working remotely are going to get priority treatment. So in this hybrid world, people are so worried about making sure that it's fair. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, it's the challenge, right? And it's where I'm pushing on the leadership, right? How important it is for leaders, because you need to make sure you show up. And by the way, everyone's responsible, and I ask everyone to ask the question, am I doing enough to show up? Am I doing enough to engage? And so if you are making sure you're finding those ways to be in the dialogue, and there's the right leadership in place, it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but this is part of when you're looking for the right role and the right company and the right leaders, you need to test for that and make sure that I'm going to be with a leader that knows how to do this, and a team can.
And one thing I think I've learned too is, as now a new manager, is don't just do those, sit down with your team once a year, or, you don't ask to sit down with your manager once a year. Like that should be, we do daily one-on-ones with our people we're managing. Then we do quarterly, QBRs and things like that. It has to be a constant flow of communication, especially in a hybrid world.
Absolutely. And it has to be a two-way conversation, right? It can't just be, I'm giving you information and hope for the best.
Totally. Well, before we run out of time, can you just tell us again where we can find out more about E equals Y and the amazing work that you all are doing?
Great. Yeah, thank you. So the website is e=y.com. It's all spelled out. And on LinkedIn, you can find me, Kathy Eastwood, or E=Y as well. You find all the information.
Awesome. And people are always saying, like, should I reach out on LinkedIn? I don't want to. Yeah. So yes, please do. Please. People want to definitely be reached out on LinkedIn. So, well, wonderful. Thank you. Well, Kathy, I want to thank you for being such a longtime member of our community, a member of our mentor team. So if anyone also wants to check out our mentorship, it's right on Power to Fly's page. And of course, please check out E=Y as well. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.